As soon as you start the exam, the clock does not stop. If you have to go to the restroom and you have to step outside, your test timer continues to run and you're eating up that 1 hour and 45 minutes that you have to take the exam. Hey, what is going on, everybody? My name is Alvy Macias, and in this video, I'm going to be explaining the Securities Industry Essentials Exam, how I was able to pass my exam, and some tips that I learned that I think might be helpful to you if you stick around until the end of the video. So for those of you that don't know, the Securities Industry Essentials Exam, or as more commonly known as the SIE exam, is sort of the lowest barrier to entry when you want to work in the finance industry, investment banking, or anything related to finance. Some of the things to note that make this exam a little bit more difficult than others is that you cannot just simply memorize questions from your course material or from stuff that you can find on the internet, articles, YouTube videos, because they literally have probably upwards of 3,000 to 5,000 questions that they pull from of their question bank. And so it's really difficult to try to memorize 3,000 to 5,000 questions. So perhaps one of the things that was a little bit confusing or just odd in this exam is that the SIE has 85 total questions, but only 75 are graded for your pass or no pass. There are 10 questions on the exam that are part of what they call a potential. Basically what that means is that FINRA is trying out these questions and they're determining whether or not they're good questions, and they're going to put them in the bank with the other thousands upon thousands of questions. This is why the exam is so difficult, because it genuinely tests your actual working knowledge as opposed to just what you've memorized from your course material. I mentioned a little bit ago that there are certain securities taken to ensure that people are not cheating or are using unapproved material for the exam. Most of this is done by going to what's called a testing Proctor location. And so pretty much what this means is that you go into a small room, you have partitions, you have headphones, and you are only allowed to look at your screen. There's cameras that you're getting monitored, there's audio monitoring. You can't walk in with anything in your pockets. You can only have your ID and the key to your locker that's outside. You get patted down, and they really try to make sure that people are not cheating to ensure the authenticity of the exam. It is also worth mentioning that immediately once you finish the exam, it calculates your answers and determine if you did in fact pass. Now, if you did pass, you will not see your percentage of how many questions you got right. All you will see is a pass. If you did not pass, and if you're within a certain percentage, you will then see a percentage that indicates how close you were to 70. By the way, a 70 is passing on the SIE, and I believe if you do not get within that certain window, let's call it 65%, then you will see a not pass on your window. So if you've made it this far in the video, you're obviously either gearing up to take your SIE, or perhaps you're looking to go into the finance industry. And so as a reward, I want to make sure I give you some tips to help make sure that you have the best possible outcome on your SIE exam date. Tip number 1 is to make sure you eat a good breakfast before your exam. Now, this sort of goes without saying, but obviously if you wake up first thing in the morning, run to the exam on an empty stomach, you might not feel 100%, or you might get distracted if your stomach starts to growl. Ensure that you eat a good breakfast before you head out to your exam, and sort of a 1B, if you will, with this tip. Don't eat anything that you normally don't eat. Try to make sure you stick to your regular diet, so stuff that you normally eat. I have heard of horror stories of individuals who go and take the exam and they eat a super unauthentic to them breakfast, or something that they just never really eaten before because they think it's healthier. They ended up getting a really upset stomach and unfortunately spent 10 to 15 minutes in the restroom. So eat something that you normally eat and that your stomach is used to, preferably an hour to 2 hours before the exam so your stomach has time to process the food. So tip number 2 is don't cram the night before the exam. Doing excessive studying the night before the exam will almost always ensure that you do not get a good sleep, and in reality, how much of the information could you still retain if you're reviewing it for the first time the night before. Now, what you do want to do is to make sure that you actually sort of just look over the book or whatever course material you have once over, just kind of refamiliarize yourself as you go leading up to the exam. Reviewing the book was something that really helped me make sure that I kind of kept all the information relevant and it was all front of mind, but I did not cram a bunch of studying the night before. Tip number 3 when taking the Securities Industry Essentials exam is to make sure you arrive at least 45 minutes before your exam start time. In most cases, when you get the invitation to go take the SIE, they will say arrive 30 minutes prior. I would recommend bump that up to 45 minutes prior, just so you give yourself plenty of extra time to get settled, to do the check-in process, to run to the restroom one last time before you actually enter the room, because it's very important to note, as soon as you start the exam, the clock does not stop. If you have to go to the restroom and you have to step outside, your test timer continues to run and you're eating up that 1 hour and 45 minutes that you have to take the exam. Make sure you arrive with plenty of time, and make sure you do all that you need to do before you take the exam. So that was my experience taking the SIE exam for my financial company. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please remember to drop a like down below. Also remember to subscribe if you're interested to learn more about my journey to getting a job in finance and how I'm sort of navigating this as I go.